Our next speaker didn't wait for change. He organized it. David Parker is the founder of Take Back Alberta. That's a grassroots movement that, if you haven't heard of it, you must be from under a rock. He flipped the script on Alberta politics. While the political elites, and I'll suggest the media elites too, were busy silencing dissent and calling you names, David was busy mobilizing thousands of everyday Albertans to take back control of their parties, their riding associations, the narrative, and now their future. He built a political force that scares the establishment. Why? Because it works. Take Back Alberta isn't just a slogan. Under David's leadership, it's become a roadmap for reclaiming power from the top-down machine. So please welcome the man who reminded Alberta how to fight and how to win, David Parker.
All right, everybody. Well, this is awesome. This is probably the biggest room that I've spoken to this week. This is my 5th speech this week, so very happy to be here. I decided, well, actually, I was on a walk, and I called Ezra, and I said, am I supposed to talk for an hour? Because I didn't have the timing right. And he said, no, don't talk for an hour. Talk for 20 minutes. So I decided that I'm going to start this speech in honor of Ezra with a story from both of our holy book. And it's from Samuel. And some of you may be aware of this story, but if you're not aware of it, I hope you think a lot about it when you leave this room. You see, Samuel was a prophet and a judge. He was appointed by God from his youth, right? God began speaking to him when he was very young. His mother actually sent him to the temple to become a priest. And then he became a judge over Israel. And he was very successful and very well beloved. But he was getting older, and his sons didn't follow in his ways. The people of Israel were upset with the corruption that was happening with his sons. They were taking money for judgments over people. And so the people of Israel came to Samuel, and they said, we love you, but we don't love your sons, which is a painful thing for any father to hear, I would imagine. And we want a king. And this upset Samuel because that was not what God had instituted for the people of Israel. He'd instituted a very different form, one might argue, of democracy, the principle of subsidiarity. So Samuel was also upset, probably somewhat offended that his children were being talked badly about. And he went to God, and he was angry. And this is one of the things I love about so much of the Bible is often people are angry with God. So what does God do? He says, Samuel, this isn't about you. It's about me. They are rejecting me. Give them a king, and they will suffer the consequences of what having a king means. Now, what does it mean to have a king? It means you're not in charge of your life. It means that you don't get to make the decisions about how things are going to go. In fact, in this passage, God specifically says, they will take your sons and send them to war, and they will take your daughters as their wives, and they will take your livestock. All of these things happened. So why am I saying this? Because I think Albertans want a queen. I think Albertans are not actually interested in doing the work. They're interested in telling politicians to do the work. And I actually think this is the problem with Western civilization right now. See, if Canada has a national sin, it's apathy. We have not governed ourselves. We have given our governance to others. We have said, you go fix the problems, and when they never fix the problems, we get mad and say all politicians are corrupt. And that may be very well true. I haven't met very many that aren't. But I will say this. My dad, when I was very young, he said, David, if all we do is demonize politicians, who's going to run for politics? Demons. And how many of you in this room have had people say, why don't you run for politics? Oh, that's not for me. Other people need to do that. Well, look at the quality of our leaders. It's very bad. These are not impressive individuals that are leading us. Our politicians, some of them, this is the best job that they've ever had. And if it's the best job you've ever had is being an MLA in the legislature, we have a problem. Those are not the people that should be leading us. But do you want to know why they're the people leading us? Because you don't show up. The truth of the matter, the heart of the problem, if you really want to boil it down, is this. You think politics is like the weather. You think it happens. You observe it happen. You even pray for rain sometimes. But politics is not the weather. Politics is people. The story of Take Back Alberta, many of you know, but I think the purpose of this speech will be to tell you the thesis behind it. The thesis behind Take Back Alberta is that our general population is so apathetic and ignorant of how their political system works that we are losing our democracy. And if you don't believe we're losing our democracy, look around. Our federal budget isn't even putting forward a budget. Our federal government is not even putting forward a budget. Over 90 candidates under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre were appointed, not elected in a nomination race. That is a violation of democracy. Right here in Alberta, in Old Stidsbury Three Hills, they didn't even hold a nomination. The United Conservative Party simply appointed the candidate, someone, by the way, who has pronouns in her bio and was pushing the vaccine. Appointed, picked by Danielle Smith. Now, you may love Danielle Smith or you may not love Danielle Smith. That's actually irrelevant. Because the problem is your feelings about your leaders don't matter. And no leader is coming to save you. None. If we are going to succeed at creating a country, then you're going to have to get off your butt and work like you never have before. Every person in this room, you're not going to be able to rely on your leaders because they don't have what it takes. That's the truth. And I know it offends some people. I know some people want to love their leaders. That is not your job in a democracy. Your job is not to worship your leaders. Your job is to hold your leaders accountable, and when they fail you, to remove them. So the thesis of Take Back Alberta is actually that we need repentance. If there is a sin of apathy, what is repentance? It is no longer being apathetic. No longer saying, I'm too busy, I have too much work, someone else can do it. They can't. No one else is going to do it. If you don't do it, it will not happen. But let's go back to the thesis. Politics is not the weather. You can change it. In fact, I've seen men and women all over this province changing it for the last 3 years. And one in particular that I would like to mention is a fellow named Mitch Sylvester. Some of you know him, right? When I met Mitch, he didn't even know how internal party politics worked. He'd never been involved in politics at all. He loved hockey, and he owned a retail sporting goods store, also sold guns, up in Bonnyville. And all he did every day was call me and ask me questions. He still calls me almost every day. And we just sit on the phone and we strategize. But I want to tell you about one particular phone call so you understand what this takes. One day I was in Ontario working on putting together the Tucker tour that happened in the United States. And I got a call from Mitch, and he was mad. He had just driven 4.5 hours all the way up from Bonnyville to Fort McMurray, and 6 people had showed up. 3 of them were the organizers. 6 people. And he said, what is wrong with the people of Alberta? They claim that things are bad. They complain about their government, and they can't even be bothered to show up at a meeting to hear what to do about it. Yet, that actually is the moment that matters. When you're willing to drive 9 hours to talk to 6 people. And now, he very rarely gets a room under 200 people. But last year alone, he did 87 meetings, and some of them were to 6 people. If you only act when things are good, if you only do things when they're easy, we will never accomplish anything. But here's the deception. Here's the great lie that must be dispelled. You can't do anything. You're just regular people. Well, I'm a homeschooler from Haines who had no political connections when he started out. And by 23, I was in the Prime Minister's office, and now I'm the bad boy of Alberta politics, apparently. How did that happen? It didn't happen because I'm a genius. It didn't happen because I'm exceptional in almost any way. I'm a pretty normal guy. I just worked hard. I just showed up. And here's the thing. We have no competition. Where are the meetings, the pro-Canada meetings happening all over Alberta? They're not. Who are the champions of Canada and Alberta? Not very many. Jason Kenney, I guess. He seems to be quite loud right now. Where are the organizers and speakers running around this province saying, we want you to stay and here's what we'll do to make that happen? They don't even give us enough respect for that. That's where they think the movement is at. So, for the last part of my speech, I want to tell you where the movement is actually at. Basically, there's 4 main groups organizing right now. You're all aware of the Alberta Prosperity Project. They're the biggest, the most successful. They're where we need to put a lot of our energy right now. And Mitch has done an absolutely incredible job of, frankly, reviving a dying organization. Okay, APP was dying. Mitch came along after doing his 87 meetings, not before, and he said, we're going to do things differently around here. And I think we are seeing the strongest and most powerful version of APP that we've ever seen in this province. It's bigger than any political party. It's got more momentum than any movement has had in Alberta in my lifetime. When Jason Kenney was uniting the parties and running for leadership, that was a huge political movement. It's about half the size of what APP is. So they are doing a great job. Now, one of the things I hear at almost every meeting is, why doesn't everybody just join APP and do that? Well, because APP is doing one thing. They are trying to get a referendum. And they will get it. They have the signatures, they have the money, they have the talent, they're going to get it. But they're focused on that, and there needs to be a lot of other groups focused on other things. See, one of the problems we have as conservatives, and why I started this speech the way that I did, is we kind of do want a king. We kind of want a leader to tell us what to do in one group, and we don't want to have to think about things. We just want to be told what to do. In politics. Not in our lives. But we want it to be simple. But here's the thing. Politics is not simple. And here's one of the biggest problems that we face in politics is that most people have no idea how to do it or even how it works. Maybe they've read some news stories. Maybe they've read some books. Maybe they even obsess about the news stories and they observe it like people observe the weather. But that is not knowing something. To know something, to become a master of it, there's only one path to truly become great at something, and that is to do it over and over and over and over again. And in this province, there is almost nobody doing that. But now, a 70-year-old man who owns a gun shop in Bonnyville has become the leader of an entire movement because he did 87 meetings. That's why. Because he did the work. And that's how you win. So we got APP. Then we got my little organization, We've taken a lot of hits from the media. The premier called me insane. 2 premiers actually have called me insane now, which I think is kind of funny. What we're doing is we're going to be putting on 100 meetings across the province. We've just finished our 3rd, so we'll have 97 more to go. And my goal is to fix the problem that I see. And the problem that I see is we've got lots of people in this movement, but we don't have enough leaders. And I'm not talking about the people standing on stage giving speeches. I'm talking about the people that are willing to organize locally. We do not have a network of local organizers built to the level that it needs to be to win a referendum campaign. As Corey said earlier, this is not going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be very difficult. This is if you think about it as a military campaign, the logistics of this would overwhelm almost anyone who actually had to think about it. And I'll give you a few examples. To get the signatures just to call the referendum, the people collecting the signatures have to be appointed by Elections Alberta. They have to have their credentials on them at all times, and they have to do it in person. You will need 1,000 people across this province over 120 days collecting 200 signatures each just to win. That is a massive logistical challenge, and one that nobody currently in the movement has ever tried. This has not been done. There's no rule book for how to collect 250,000 signatures across Alberta. There hasn't even been that many members of a political party in this province ever. So, there's a lot of work to do. We need leaders. We need people who can put 100 people in a room. So my 97 meetings, my goal is to help create and foster those leaders and train them in how to become political organizers. And then we will have a campaign team already in place for the referendum. Now there's also another group. Some of you may like them, some of you may not, but there's the Republican Party of Alberta. And actually at this moment in time, the most important thing that's happening in the independence movement is the by-election in Old Didsbury Three Hills. The most important thing. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. The first is, if the Republican Party of Alberta gets crushed in that by-election, it will set back the movement to possibly the point where we will never be able to get over 50%. If the temperature on the ground is, we'll stay with the Federalists. We'll stay with the person who wants to negotiate with Mark Carney. We're not really that interested in independence. In fact, we're not even really willing to take any risks on this. The status quo is what we love. If that's how things go, which I don't think they will, but if that's how things go there, people will just mock us. The East will be relentless in their mockery because we can't get organized. So whether you like him or not, right now, for the next 3 weeks, the most important person in the independence movement is Cam Davies. And I know some people don't like him, but he is the most important person in the independence movement right now, because he's actually on the ground fighting for what all of us here say we believe in. We all say we want an independent Alberta. That's what he's fighting for. That's not, by the way, what Danielle Smith is fighting for. She's very clear. She does not want to leave Canada. And at some point, she's going to have to make a decision whether she's going to obey the people or her own convictions. If Cam Davies wins in Old Didsbury Three Hills, that will force that decision. So whether you support Danielle Smith or you don't support Danielle Smith, the best thing you can do for independence, if you live in that riding, or even if you want to do something for independence, is go and put the pressure on. And this is why this is important, and this goes back to the beginning. If politics is about loyalty to leaders, if politics is about electing a king to rule over us or a queen, then we will no longer have a democracy. But If politics is about electing representatives and then telling them what we want them to do, we can keep our democracy. I recently did an interview with the Wall Street Journal, which was kind of funny because they're pretty left-wing. And they asked me, where do you think the world is headed? I think we're at a crossroads. We are either headed towards empire or localism. Either we're going to have one centralized government, probably in America, in the next 10 to 15 years, and an empire will be built. This has happened many times throughout history. Or the people will rise up and take their sovereignty back. And then it will look like balkanization. It will look like an independent Alberta, an independent Quebec, maybe an independent Texas. But that's better for a couple of reasons. One, competition breeds competence. If you have only one form of government and one leader, you're not going to see growth. You're not going to see excellence. You're just going to see stagnation. But the other reason is it's much easier to control politicians when they're local than when they're far away in Ottawa or Washington, D.C. or wherever they are. You have more of a say here than you do there. And we know that. So my encouragement to all of you. Oh yeah, sorry, there's one other group that I forgot to mention that's obviously very important, and that's the intellectual base. Maybe even we could call them the founding fathers. I consider Corey Morgan one of those, Michael Wagner. These people are traveling around. They've written books. I'm not an expert on why independence should happen. I'm only an expert in political organizing. It's the only thing that I've really mastered in my life. But we need to support these groups. And instead of doing what we always do as conservatives, which is talking bad about anyone who's doing something, we need to unite and realize that we need every single person pulling in the same direction, every single group on the same mission. And what is that mission right now? That mission is to get as many people to sign up pledging that they say they will get signatures, and then getting those signatures so we can have a referendum. We can argue about what the future Alberta is going to look like. We can argue about whether you like David Parker or Cam Davies or Danielle Smith. These things are irrelevant. If you agree with the premise that Alberta should be free, we must have a referendum for that to happen. So please, text 5 people you know today and say, have you signed the Alberta Prosperity Pledge yet? That you will vote yes in a referendum. If you are so inclined, I would encourage you to hold a meeting. But most importantly, you must get away from the illusion of authority. You must become sovereign. Thank you.
I just put David on the spot. We gave each speaker 30 minutes. And so he's got 7 minutes left on the clock. We'll take a couple of questions. I'll come to you, Jerry Springer style. I'm going to hold on to the microphone because conservatives love to talk. Please make it a question. No speeches, no statements. Okay, I see this table here, and then I'll come here.
How do we sign up to be the people that take the signatures, and how do we do that?
So that hasn't been developed yet because the law is going to be passing on June 23rd. So as soon as that law passes, then the APP will be submitting their application for the question. If that's approved by Elections Alberta, then APP will have a process. They don't have a process yet because it hasn't been outlined by Elections Alberta because we have never had a citizen-initiated referendum of this scale in Alberta yet. Just go to their web, sign up as a volunteer, get involved with your chapter, and then when the moment comes, they'll be sending out the call for sure for as many people as they can get.
Hello. We all that are here know that we need to go, and I am very interested in what your 6 clearest and most focused reasons are for why we need to go. Those talking points, if you will.
Okay, so I have 3 primary reasons. The first is we are in an abusive relationship. And when you're in an abusive relationship, you don't try to negotiate, you don't try to reason with them. When you get to the point where the abuse is so bad and they have no desire to change, you have to leave. So that's the first reason. The second reason is immigration. If Canada continues to bring in the number of people that they are at the rate that they are, it will be a failed state. It may already be a failed state. And it's not because immigrants are bad or we should hate other cultures or anything like that. It's that we do not have the infrastructure to bring this number of people in and maintain our quality of life. And we see that because people my age and younger can't even afford to buy a house. The level of immigration that's coming into Canada is intentional. It's being used to dilute the population. I mean, if you come from a place where you're making $2 a day and you come to Canada, it can get really bad before you're going to think that it's worse than that. But they are degrading our quality of life, our medical system, our healthcare system, our education system. It's all falling apart because of mass immigration. Anyone who tells you that it's not mass immigration, that there's some other reason, is lying to you. So that's my second reason. But my third reason is that I think we can build the best country on the face of the earth. The wealthiest, the most prosperous, the freest, with the best values, and we can become a shining light on the hill in a world that is about to get very dark. I think that anybody who's paying attention and actually has even a semblance of knowledge about business and economics, they can look at the world that's being created, a multipolar world. We're not in the American Pax Americana anymore. We're moving into a very violent, look what's happening in Israel and Iran right now. Look what's happening in Ukraine. I could go on and on. Alberta has everything we need to be self-sustaining, prosperous, and free. I see us as basically creating a fortress that we can build something new. Singapore was a swamp, right? 70 years ago, Singapore was a swamp that was kicked out of Malaysia. Now it's one of the wealthiest and most prosperous places in the world. In our lifetime, in fact, in the last decade, a man named Bukele in El Salvador has taken their murder rate from the highest in the Western Hemisphere to the lowest in the world, right? It is possible to have better. The problem is the propaganda is all there is the status quo. You can't create anything new. You can't do anything new. So the final answer to your question is, how is everyone talking about how it's impossible for Alberta to separate and create a nation? That's what everyone's saying. Oh, you can't create your own nation. Humanity has created thousands of nations throughout history. In fact, they used to do it on papyrus with ink. We have all human knowledge at our fingertips. We have technology that would make our ancestors think we were gods. If we can't create a country, and we're pretty pathetic, then we've actually had our minds programmed to only think in status quo and fear. So I guess my final reason is because what better thing could we do with our lives than build a great nation?
If you were to say a couple of the main reasons why Canadians have become so groomed into apathy, where would you say that came from? Because I'm 63 now and I'm watching this and I've never seen a country so asleep, and I don't know what put us to sleep this way.
Okay, so that's a great question, but it's multi-layered. But I would say there's 3 primary problems. The first is historical. We are a colony of Great Britain, and Great Britain is a class-based system. There's the rulers and the peasants. And my ancestors were loyalists. So when the Americans had their revolution and created their country, mine were like, nope, we want to be under the king, and they left and they settled Ontario. So I'm kind of ashamed of that now, but it is what it is. We're a deferential people. Canadians in general. Albertans less so, but Canadians in general are very deferential. We trust authority. That's kind of how we've been programmed by our history. The second is the decline of faith. So people don't believe in God anymore, and therefore they don't believe in anything. And if you don't believe in anything, why would you fight for anything? If you don't believe that there's a life after death, then you're not going to do anything in this life to make your life after death better. The death of God, as Nietzsche said, has been the greatest disaster in human history, in my opinion, has led to more death than anything else, if you include abortion in death, which I do. It's bad. So our loss of religion, and then finally entertainment. We have more bread and circuses right now than we've ever had in the history of humanity. You can live your entire life entertaining yourself and never think about anything. So why would you think about something boring like politics when you can watch the latest Netflix show or interest yourself with sports or anything? And I love the Oilers, for example. I love hockey. Played at shinny all over central Alberta. Never played officially, but sports is a distraction in many ways, and it's become a religion for a lot of people. And a lot of people spend way more time watching their favorite sports team than they do doing anything to improve their society. So those would be big reasons. I could talk about that for literally, I have hundreds of hours, but those would be my main points.
Okay, last question for David real quick.
So the next step you say, and the most important step, is to support Cam Davies and Old Three Hills Didsbury. How do the people in this room support that if they don't live in that riding?
Sorry, I missed the last part of the question.
How do people here support that movement if they don't live in that riding?
I think the best thing you can do is, funnily enough, is you can probably go on social media and express your support. You can also go down and volunteer. They need 3 door-knocking teams of 15 people. And again, he is the most important person until June 23rd, right? And then after that, it's up to us. But the message that we want to scare the crap out of Ottawa. We also want to scare the crap out of Edmonton. And I know there's a lot of Danielle fans here. She was at my wedding. I understand why you love her. But we need to scare the crap out of her. Because she's not doing enough, she's not pushing it enough, she's going on TV and saying it's my job to make sure it doesn't get to a yes. She said that. So she needs to be sent a message by the people of Alberta that say, no, actually, this is something that we want. So volunteering, you can go down there, donations, you can donate to that campaign from anywhere in Alberta. But also, one other thing that I would note is the APP needs $1.6 million minimum to get all the signatures that they need to get for this referendum. I'm working on putting a group of 200 people together who are going to put 5,000 in. I'm one of those people. So if you're interested in doing that, please contact me. My DMs are open on X, but we need to raise $1 million, hopefully by the end of the summer. There's a big fundraiser going on in Lethbridge. There's lots you can do, but just right now, the reason I said that Cam Davies is the most important person right now, only till June 23rd, but because that is our best opportunity to send a message to Ottawa. And here's the thing, the Wall Street Journal is coming, CNN are coming to these meetings. Like, the world is watching, and if the message is, yeah, we're just going to keep with the status quo, that is going to put a wet blanket on the sovereignty movement, the independence movement, the separatist movement, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be damaging to what we're trying to achieve. So thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the speakers, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.